Hey VB.nuts out there, it's time for .NET Rocks, the internet audio talk show for .NET developers. I'm your host in New London, Connecticut, Carl Franklin. And my co-host, sitting right beside me on the damn couch, Mr. Mark Dunn.
Hey Carl, it's great to be here.
This is incredible. This is probably the first, if not, no, the second show that we've actually done in the same room together.
That's right. The first one was the .NET Users Group in Boston.
That's right, with Dan Appleman on the phone.
That's right. People brought books for Dan to sign.
Yeah,
because they heard we're doing a show with Dan Appleman.
It's like, no, he's going to be on the phone. You don't get it. Well, anyway, we signed him for them, and we signed them. Dan Appleman, have a nice life. Yeah. That was a great show. But anyway, that was show number 2, and we're up to God knows what now.
30-something.
We're getting old.
Yeah.
An announcement. We are going to officially be a bi-weekly show now. So we're
going by.
We're coming out of the closet. We just found that people... Okay, have your laugh. Go ahead. All right, everybody. Yuck, yuck, yuck. We just found that people aren't keeping up with the shows. We're pumping them out too fast for people to digest.
Right.
Apparently. So and besides, it's killing us and our families.
Yeah, that's right. My wife's about to kill me.
Good Lord, will you stop? Yeah. So we decided to slow it down a bit and give y'all a chance to catch up. And I just want to remind you that just because we taped a show last year doesn't mean it's old news.
Oh, that's right.
I mean, there's so much good fundamental stuff you can learn by listening to the old shows. It's definitely not disposable. Well, anyway, the reason that you're up here, Mark, is you're teaching the VB.NET Masterclass with me.
Oh, that's right, I am.
Yeah, and it's an interesting thing. We did a 2-for-1 summer special, thinking, maybe we'd get a few more people in the class than we normally do in the summer. Not only did we fill our classroom, but we had eight extras to boot, so we have 28 people knocking on our door.
Yeah. I
called Mark up and said, hey, I need some help up here, and we convinced the extra people who last 8 to sign up that Mark wasn't going to steal their money and run off to Tobago, so that he was going to do a good job. So they did, and they came up, and it's going great. And so that's why you're here. So we just decided to do a show. As long as you're here,
yeah, why not?
Why not?
Yeah.
Break out the microphones, the crack pipes, and we'll have a party.
That's right. Another episode of This Old Crack House.
All right, kids, this is a joke. All right, don't do this at home. All right. Well, anyway, I'm very, very excited for a change. Now, you're the excited guy, Mark, and everybody knows that. You're excitable. But this I feel is probably my most exciting show. One of them, because we have some people on the VB.NET team at Microsoft on the phone. Probably the first people from Microsoft we've had on the VB.NET team. Of course, we had Alan Cooper, who was the father of Visual Basic, but since then, a lot has happened. It's been about 12 years,
right?
13 years since Visual Basic came out, and lots and lots of things have happened. This language is huge now, and it's a timely show, because there's been so much mud being slung at VB programmers.
No kidding.
It's unbelievable. We have to stand up for ourselves, people.
That's right.
And I'm proud to announce Amanda Silver and Paul Vick from the VB.NET team. Let me just quickly introduce them. Amanda Silver is a program manager with the Visual Basic.NET team. And she's responsible for the features including the Visual Basic compiler and language, compatibility, and performance. She has tech edited several books, including Ted Pattison's Object-Oriented Programming with Visual Basic.NET. That's a great book, by the way.
That is an awesome book. I love that one.
Yeah, Ted's a good guy. Very smart guy. And he's like a pure VB guy, too. We like Ted.
Yeah.
And the VB.NET language, printed by O'Reilly Press. Oh, okay. I that was a long title that I put a big parentheses in the middle there. It's Object-Oriented Programming with Visual Basic.NET and the VB.NET language. So she's a frequent guest in live chats on MSDN and has appeared on Microsoft's VB TV with the imitable Ari Bixhorn. And articles by Amanda can be found in Component Developer, or Code, magazine, and she can often be found in developer forums such as VS Connections, Tech Ed, and at user group meetings across the country. Paul Vick, he originally joined Microsoft as part of the Microsoft Access Group in 1992, and after an internship with them the previous summer, he worked on the Access team for about 4.5 years. In the process, shipping versions 1.0 through 97. And for the first few years, he worked on the Query Designer. Very cool. I used the Query Designer from Access to generate queries that I would stuff into strings and call directly in VB.
Right.
I remember doing that a lot.
Yeah, the Query Designer in SQL Server looks, very similar.
Yeah, exactly like that. Well, anyway, so he worked on the Query Designer, later moving on to be a technical lead for the product and owning performance for the last 2 versions he worked on. And then in 1997, he joined the Visual Basic group, and for the first 1.5 years, he worked on adding features to the OLE automation component that shipped with Visual Basic 6.0. As a matter of fact, somebody in my class has been talking to me all week about that component.
Ah, cool.
Saying how cool it is. After shipping VB6, he moved into the core compiler team as it started work on what would become VisualStudio.net. Then for a year, he worked on the code generator and for the compiler until he took over the compiler team in late 1999. Along with the program manager, he drove the decision to change the language to better suit it to .NET and the CLR, helped define the new language, and for the first time wrote a full language spec for the language. He also helped shepherd the language changes into the compiler itself and shipped Visual Basic.NET in 2002. Recently, he's become a technical lead in VB, continuing to work on the Visual Basic language definition and the compiler. Folks, I can't tell you how much I appreciate having you on our little show. Thank you for coming and welcome.
Well, thanks for having us.
Yeah, it's great to be here.
I feel like I'm in the presence of greatness here.
Oh, no kidding. I am excited.
Oh, man.
I'm blushing on this end.
So, geez, where do we start? I mean, there's so many things I want to talk about. As I was reading your bio the other day, I was thinking about how you changed the language or helped drive the decision to change the language to better suit it to .NET and the CLR. And you're the guys who had to deal with the, shall we say, vocal minority who put up a big stink about array indexing and how you create arrays and things like that, right?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
So you're the guys who had to make that awful decision.
It was a very interesting year and a half between that decision and actually releasing. It's sort of gotten easier over time, but it was definitely a rough period for a while.
Just to remind the listeners, the decision I'm talking about was when you create an array in VB6, you could say dim myArray 6, and you'd get a 7-element array, 0 through 6. Mm-hmm. And in .NET, however, in all the other languages, C# especially, when you create an array and you pass a number to it, that's the number of elements you want to create, not the last element index. And a lot of, well, I won't say a lot, but a small group of vocal and visible in the press people really took shots at Microsoft for changing that, and said it was going to be such a breaking change that they'd have to rewrite all their code, and their customers wouldn't tolerate that. And my initial reaction was, well, little do they know what they're really up against when they go to convert. I mean,
that's right. They may want to rewrite it anyway.
Reality sets in after a while, and they just nah. And now we're stuck with the results of that bullshit. So.
Tell us how you feel. Yeah.
I mean, that's how I feel. How do you guys feel about that?
You mean about the array decision?
Yeah.
That was really difficult because actually for a while we had actually changed it to be in line with the other languages, so that when you said dim A sub 5, you got a 5-element array rather than a 6-element array.
Right.
But it was sort of the difficult. It was the difficult part of that version, was really trying to find like that balance point between changing the things to be really sort of .NET like, but it's still retaining like the essential flavor of VB, and it's also like some things you can break and they're going to be obvious, and some things you break and people are going to scratch their head for a month trying to figure out why it isn't working the way it used to.
Right.
And the array bound thing was really one of those where it's sort of like it was so subtle that it's like, well, this is just the way VB is. And so we ended up changing it back so that, DMA sub 5 is now a 6-element array.
Having had a couple of years to reflect on that decision, do you think you made the right one?
Yes.
Yeah.
But it's still...
Yeah, I think so too. I mean, one of the things that our users want is explicitness in their programming.
Right.
With the next release, the declaration for arrays will change slightly in that you'll be able to specify the lower bound. So you'll be able to say 0 through 6, or 0 to 6.
Or could we do 100 to 120?
Well, that's the ultimate motivation. I mean, if we hadn't changed it back, then there would never be a chance for us to restore that. And we're not sure what it's looking unlikely in the next version that we'll be able to do that again. But there's always hope.
Yeah.
It's a matter of how much time and how much effort. But that definitely was something that we've lost that we would like to add back. But
right.
But so we kind of wanted to leave our options open on that as well. So that was another motivation.
It must be tough. I was just going to say, Mark, it must be really tough to, sit there and think about, the impact of these decisions on. I mean, you're talking about changing a
Millions
language.
of programmers.
Millions of programmers are going to be affected by your decision. I mean, what I was going to say was, I think you made the right decision. Maybe not for the language, but maybe for the fact that the press is just dying to find any little flaw that they can exploit in the opposition, the Java camp and all this, and therefore any sort of thing can get blown out of proportion and be disastrous for the product. So I think that was maybe an important consideration.
The thing I heard the most from other developers about was edit and continue.
Right, yeah.
And, I guess it's not talking out of school to say that's going to be in the next version. We know that now, right?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
All right.
We say it as loudly and as far as we can.
Yeah.
It was something we very much wanted to include in the last versions, actually,
right.
The last two versions. But for various technical reasons, it didn't make it, and it was really probably the most painful decision that we had to make about for Visual Basic.net, definitely, because that was just a huge loss.
Yeah, I have a friend in Birmingham that his name is Wayne, and whenever he first installed Visual Studio.net, he said, "I feel like Gollum crawling around in a dark cave. They've taken my precious."
Well, it really does have a fundamental impact on how you develop your application and how you test your application while you're developing your application.
Absolutely, and that's definitely what the VB programmer wants. They want to be able to think and code at the same time, and
right. Which implies that people who program in other languages don't think.
No, you know what I mean. I mean, sort of, think about the design of the application in sort of code a stream of consciousness way. And tinker with things, and that's always been sort of the legacy of VB.
Right. But
I think part of VB is testing out your application as you write it.
Right. Yeah. You want to make sure what you've written so far is going to work before you start writing lots of big things, and yeah.
But you make adjustments. Since edit and continue wasn't there, I don't miss it so much anymore.
Yeah, not me anymore, really.
Yeah.
So you guys won't be sad if we decide to pull it at the last minute?
No, don't do that.
I want it back. Trust me, I want it back. Yeah. One thing I do want to mention is that I remember in Beta 1, you guys had it in there. You had edit and continue in there. And I remember it causing some weird problems. I guess there were some bugs, and so I always just chalked it up to the fact that, it must be really technically difficult to pull off edit and continue when you don't have an interpreter.
Right.
So did you add an interpreter, or how did you finally solve the problems that... I mean, because, you're compiling code in the background, and you're sort of compiling it on the fly, and it's almost like you have to back up mid-program and recompile and replace code, and, I mean, that's got to be an awfully challenging thing to do.
It is. I mean, it's probably the one feature I've worked on that is closest to sort of rocket science.
Absolutely.
I bet.
Because what it really was is actually, we're not actually interpreting it even now, but it's sort of like we took one tack with replacing you're basically replacing your function while you're running it, and we took one tack with
Ooh.
it in 2002, and it just didn't work. Ultimately, we felt like we weren't converging on actually a solution that was going to work.
Yeah.
And so we have sort of took a whole new different tack, step back, redesigned it, and it's actually amazing. Like because what happens sort of at a simple level is, you make a change, we recompile it, and then we hand off the new version of your method to the runtime and the debugger, and then they are building a whole lot of logic about figuring out when to switch over from the old version to the new version, and it's just unbelievable. It's amazing. Like in our current builds, it works. I was involved in designing it and helped with sort of figuring out how we're going to do it, and I'm still just amazed. Wow, this actually works.
Yeah, it's got to be gratifying, though.
Yeah,
definitely.
Wow.
I'm curious too. Is this going to be a feature added to other .NET languages, or is it only supported by VB.NET?
Well, we don't know right now what the long-term prospects will be, but it looks like right now that C# is not going to have it in the next version.
As Yuval said in his show we just did with him, that the C# programmer, that's not a major feature to them. The C# debugging process, as he said, is sort of like, you you hit a breakpoint, you look at some variables in memory, you scratch your chin, you go to the water cooler, you have a cup of coffee, you come back, lean back in your chair, look up at the ceiling, and then press the next and go to the next line.
Yeah. That's actually what we've been hearing from our C# customers. And they basically imply that the debugging experience is just totally fundamentally different.
Right.
From the VB developer.
It could ruin a good thing if they got work done too quickly.
Well, the thing of it is, it's like, I'll admit, being a C++ programmer, and that's what we develop our applications in. When I first came to the VB team, I was kind of the C# mindset. I was like, editing continue. I don't, I write my programs better than that. But it's like I find now, having worked on VB a lot, it's like even when I'm doing C++ programming, it's like, even C++ programmers, even C# programmers, you've been running your application, you hit a bug, and it was something really stupid. You forgot to initialize something, you forgot to put a little line of code.
Right.
It's like, I find now it's like really annoying. It's like, all right, I got to stop, I got to add the stupid thing, and then I got to get all the way back to where I was before.
Right.
And so it's like, even for the C# user, there's still those places.
It's so they're used to the pain though, so it doesn't bother them so much. Yeah, it's VB programmers are just fundamentally, brain is wired differently. That's what it's all about, I think.
Yeah, we're like crack. It's like we alter your brain chemistry and you use this too much and you can't stop.
That's true.
Mark, we have a crack theme going here today.
We sure do. Yeah.
Might as well play along. Well, I heard when I was talking with Matthew Reynolds, who runs .NET 24/7. Have you seen the site?
I saw that he was interviewed on your show a while ago.
I talked to him a bit about the the VB versus C# thing a bit, and he said something that astounded me a little bit. VB.NET does background compiling, and C# doesn't. So what that means is that after you move off a line of code, the reason that you get the squiggles showing up is because your code was actually compiled in the strict type checking, and the compiler goes to work and finds the problems and lets you know what they are. And he was mentioning the fact that on a very, very fast machine with lots of RAM, once the project size got to a critical mass, the background compiling sort of brought the machine to a halt. Mm-hmm. And I wondered if that's just comes with the territory, or is that a fluke, or what do you think about that?
Well, we know now that the 2002 version of VB.NET had some scaling problems with regards to background compilation.
That's right. He did mention it was 2002.
But we think that they have been mostly addressed with the 2003 release.
Okay, great. Yeah, he did mention that it was 2002 and he hadn't tried it again.
Is there an option to turn off background compile somewhere?
There isn't
No.
an option to turn off background compile, and that's because there are so many tools in the IDE that are driven off of background compilation. The object
Right.
browser, IntelliSense,
Yeah.
Right.
the Pretty Lister, everything, the drop downs, they basically would not work. They'd be out of sync if we didn't have background compilation on.
Yeah, we don't want that.
Yeah. You know,
I've heard that those are useful tools.
yes.
Yeah.
Right, we have, there's a guy in my class this week, and I won't tell anybody who he is, but I can tell he came from a very high-level approach to programming down. Very low tolerance for typing at all, this guy.
He's a logo programmer.
Yeah. And he said, you know, in VB6, I had this little wizard where I could just create a function and type some stuff, and it would create, you know, the function for me, and I use that all the time to create subs and functions, and now I have to type, you know, public function, and I'm thinking, oh, you poor bastard. You have to type. Oh no!
Wah, wah, wah.
That
Call the
was really
ambulance.
surprising. You know, the add procedure dialogue.
Right.
We didn't have it. I was just amazed that there were like quite a few people who were like, you know, where did it go?
Right.
Where, you know?
In the class builder utility, what a piece of crap that was anyway. I mean, what? Who wants
Great.
that?
One of these guys probably, designed that.
Nah, that predates us, so you're safe.
You can tell though that was written by, you know, somebody who had just signed up.
Well, I actually used the class builder utility.
Oh, I
to write,
used it too.
I used it to write property procedures, but I found it would screw my code up if I ever opened it back up again. It was
Right.
like a one-shot deal.
It was a one-shot deal, right?
Yeah.
Hey, is this cool or what? How often do you get to talk to the people who write Visual Basic, for crying out loud? This is just a dream come true for me. Anyway, I want to announce a couple things about Franklin's Net and about .NET Rocks. First is a new class on the Microsoft Data Access Application Block. It's a one-day class, and if you don't know what I'm talking about, go listen to the show we did with Michael Stewart from Microsoft Consulting Services on the Blue Bricks, or the data application blocks. Well, the Data Access Application Block is a .NET component. It's free. That contains optimized data access code that'll help you call stored procedures and issue SQL text commands against a SQL Server database. So this is a best practice component, pre-built, sanctioned by Microsoft, and fully supported by Microsoft, and I'll show you how to use it in this one-day class. Also, as you know or you may not know, Mark Dunn is teaching both a VBNet Masterclass in November in Atlanta, Georgia, and also an ASP.NET Masterclass with Marcy Robillard in January, twice, once in New London and once in Atlanta. So, if you haven't checked out our classes lately, check them out. Of course, we're still doing the Sockets class and, of course, the VBNet Masterclass. And they're just getting better and better. www.franklins.net. Hey, now let's get back to our talk with Amanda Silver and Paul Vick from Microsoft about Visual Basic .NET 8.0. I'm all goose pimply right here on .NET Rocks. Don't you go away.
But I find just the level of detail and quality in the wizards and the tools in VB.NET are just so awesome. So much better. You know, little things like the data environment. Remember the data environment in VB6? We're all sitting around like, remember the day?
Yeah, back then.
Well, yeah. Well, that thing really didn't understand parameters very well.
Yeah.
You know, it didn't do a really good job of picking up what was a parameter. And when you go into the data adapter wizard, for example, in VBNet, and you just type in a select statement, you know, put in @ signs and things, it actually figures out that those are parameters, goes and gets the schema and creates your parameter list for you just automatically. Just little things like that just please me to no end.
Yeah, I mean, the data team has done a great job, actually. I've actually just been using it myself for just some personal stuff, and so, yeah, I'm always amazed at, like, you just click and, hey, that's great.
Yeah. So what else is new in VB.NET 2.0, whatever we're calling? What are we calling this now? VB8?
I have been known to have some of the specs have Visual Basic version 8.
Yeah, if you open the project files and look at the text,
Yeah.
you'll see the VB version
Also,
in there.
I think
you'll see 7.
The compiler also says that at the command
Yeah.
line, doesn't it?
Yeah, it'll be version 8.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah,
so,
I mean, C, and when you compile C, like they're on like 12 or 13 or 14 or something like that. I don't know. It's just amazing.
so what else can you tell us about the new stuff without getting fired?
Yeah, they had a career at Microsoft before they did our show.
I know, that's right. We have a way of ruining people's careers. right?
.NET Rocks, also known as the career killer.
The career
That's right,
killer.
Yeah, they said they'd edit that out.
Just ask Michelle LaRue. Well, anyway,
So we're gonna bring back the great debugging experience that VB programmers are used to. So Add and Continue will be back in there, along with some other features that are long lost. But the other thing is the language isn't going to, dumb things down. We're going to have support for generics.
yes.
Oh, yeah.
Yes.
I'm not sure how I'm going to use a generic yet, but I'm glad to hear that you're going to put it in there.
Yeah, you
love
are
it.
going to use them, and you're probably going to use them for strongly typed collections,
Yeah, I was just
Cool.
gonna.
so that you don't need to cast things as you put them in or out.
Collections have
Cool.
been a kind of a problem. Writing your own collections has been, tedious.
Yeah.
So I'm very psyched.
It's like also one of those things as we start to use them. I mean, sort of. I keep coming back to the drug metaphor. I mean, it's kind of one of those insidious things you get hooked on as well. It's like you just find probably maybe not for.
It's like methamphetamines. That's what it's like.
I mean, it may be for some of the high end uses, but I just find it's like one of those things where you sort of say at the first, like, I don't need those, and then you say, all right, well, collections, yeah, okay, and then
Right.
as you kind of get used to them more, you start finding places where where they can be really useful.
Yeah.
You were dealing with multiple things of different types, and you say, oh, I could just use a generic method here. And I don't know how much people will use that, but it's definitely.
Oh, I think they will. I really do think that adding more powerful features to the language is going to encourage people to use them because,
Sure.
there's a huge community of people out there who are just looking for anything new to write about and to speak about. I mean, that's what they do for a living, And when the word gets out, it spreads like wildfire.
Right.
And people start using it. I think it's great. Juval Lowy just introduced us to generics just a couple of weeks ago. And we were really impressed.
Right.
And that was one question we asked him: are you going to have support for generics in VBNet? And he didn't know.
Yeah, he couldn't say.
We're going to have support for both production and consumption.
Oh, cool.
And you said overloaded operators too, right?
Yep.
Cool.
The SQL types that currently exist in the system.data namespace, overload operators, they show up in the object browser with an op_explicit or some op_addition, something like that. And you can call them explicitly in VB today as though it were a normal method call. But
Wow.
in the next version, you'd be able to just, do SQL integer plus SQL integer.
Cool.
So.
And
Awesome.
there are a lot of basic types too. I mean, like GUIDs or datetime and timespan all have operators that today you got to call explicitly, and they'll
Right.
just magically start working. It'll be great.
Hey, I'm glad to hear you say GUID. I get grief about this all
Yeah,
the
no
time. People are
kidding.
going, it's GUID. You hick. You redneck from Alabama?
Yeah.
Well, I'm from North Carolina, so maybe it's just a southern thing.
It could be a southern thing.
Somebody told me it was an East Coast West Coast thing. Like we say GUID on the East Coast and GUID on the West.
Well,
I think it was Sells that said that.
Yeah. Could be.
although I learned it out here in Seattle, so I
Yeah.
don't know. Take it for what it's worth.
Whatever. Who cares, really, right? It's a GUID, all right?
Right.
Well, anyway, wow, this is great. I'm so excited to be learning this stuff.
Yeah.
So what are the little features that you guys want to see in the language?
Oh man, you had to catch me off guard. Let me go get my book.
Yeah.
No, I really don't have much to complain about. Give me a minute. I'll think of something.
Well, what's your favorite feature in the language right now?
I'll jump in and say I love inheritance.
Well, of
you know.
course, yeah.
Right. And I was, one of the mouthpieces before going, you don't really need code inheritance in VB6. And I kind of defended VB6 compared to C++, but now that I can do it, I'm very happy.
I like everything about it. I like attributes. I like inheritance. I like overloading is a great thing.
Overloading's awesome.
All the
No more methods with like 30 optional parameters.
yeah, exactly. I love overloads that call overloads that call overloads. I mean, I like that, you know.
I love having one environment that I can do web application development and Windows application development in at the same time.
You know, the only complaint I have is that people don't take it so seriously, and it just bugs me that people are saying that, you know, if you want to do components and system level stuff, use C#. Well, why? I mean, there's a few features. Oh, okay, all right. I got a couple of things. I like about C# that I would like to see in VBNet. One is XML comments and to be able to compile those into IntelliSense.
You're gonna get
That'll be there.
Yes!
All right.
Yes!
This is the best part about, you know.
It's like Christmas.
I know, really. We get to be Santa Claus here, doling out the presents.
All right.
Oh, man.
Yeah.
Hang on a second. I got to have a beer. Or
Cause
some
for
crack or
celebration.
something. Wow. The other one is all the data types that we don't get, like unsigned integers and things like that. I'd like to see those, and I've actually had a situation where I needed them, and you know, that's the argument I hear a lot is, when do you need an unsigned integer?
Right.
As it turns out, to do some DNS operations with the tools in the framework, some of those require unsigned integers and unsigned bytes and things like that, and you just can't do it in VB. You have to do it in C#. So I'd like to see that, and I want to know why you guys left that out anyway.
Trying to decide whether to talk out of school here or not.
Well, it's not part of the common type system, right?
No, they're types in the framework, are they not?
Well, no, but there's a spec for the common types. You know, it's part of the common language spec.
Right, common language.
Okay.
So I don't think those are part of the common language.
Really?
Well, they're not, and we'll leave another language that shall remain nameless. Actually, was
now you gotta
the major
tell us.
proponent for
not including
the unsigned types in the common language subset. So we were actually going to do them, but then we thought, well, you know, they're not in the common language subset. You know, why bother?
Huh.
Yeah.
And then that other language then added them back.
Okay.
Too late for us to actually change. We should have gone with our initial instinct.
Do you think they'll end up in the framework at some point? And why not?
You mean in the common language subset?
Yeah.
I mean, they are definitely in the framework today.
I mean in the common language spec. Yeah.
I don't know. That's an interesting question. I mean, it's...
And why not? I mean, why not?
Well, I mean, it's the interesting thing about the common language subset is it is sort of this, you know, it's sort of like the UN.
Right.
And so it is, I mean, it's not just, you know, it's not just VB or even VB and C# or even VB and C# and managed C++. You know, it's also us and a number of other languages that are also implementing on top of the .NET.
Yawn. Yawn.
Yeah, I know.
Yawn. Put it back in.
Eiffel.net, COBOL.net.
Yeah, who cares? I mean, what do you do that in class?
Don't knock Eiffel. You know, Bertrand Meyer's going to come after.
But okay. Those are great languages, but how many books on COBOL.net do you see at Amazon.com? And who many? You know,
one.
But I mean, it is one of those things that is going to move slowly.
I hear you.
Even though VB and C# are doing generic
Right.
in this release, they won't be part of the common language subset, or it's very unlikely at least.
Okay.
For this version, but you know, it's one of those things where it's like, yeah, you know, we're pushing along.
Right.
So, but we are planning. I don't know whether it's been announced or not, but we are planning to do unsigned types.
Oh, you are?
Yeah.
All right. Is that why you hesitated?
Yeah, we did hesitate. I think that's the right. Yeah.
Okay.
I think we can say that without.
Yeah, I
getting
think
fired.
that.
Cool.
All right, good.
Cool.
And if anybody from Microsoft who is going to get them in trouble is listening, I will take full responsibility for this.
Yeah.
But you're totally right. I mean, it's one of those things where you know, the 90% of the time you don't need the unsigned types. It's like,
Right.
who cares? But then like the 10%, especially when you're dealing with, you know, the rest of the world that is
Right.
C++, you know, wrote the protocols in C++.
Right. I mean, a C# guy writes a class and he expects an unsigned int. You can't call him.
Although we have reached a kind of funny dilemma with regards to unsigned types, which is that we can't. We know that they are useful for very, very specific cases, but we can't figure out what to write the documentation samples on because there isn't a case.
Right.
We think that unsigned types are the right types to use. That's kind of a general solution that a lot of developers would understand.
Oh, I think there's some people you could ask that would be able to come up with something creative.
All right. So what do you think, Carl?
What do I think? Oh, well,
What is a good potential sample?
I personally don't know, but I think there's some people that would have a good potential sample that are pretty smart and understand those things.
Well, we're definitely open to suggestions. So if anybody wants to
Okay.
suggest a sample topic, that would be great.
All right.
Right.
Yeah, it is. It would be hard to find a good sample. I would just, what about some of the tools that require them? I mean,
What
like,
you mentioned before, DNS?
Yeah, like this DNS thing. I was doing an MX record lookup, and in order for that to work, I had to use an unsigned integer, just because of what the protocol expects.
Yeah, but we're like, I mean,
but part of the
we're a little
problem,
hesitant to have
right.
first-time users come across DNS, MX records.
But if you think you need it, you'll understand it. So,
Yeah, I know, I understand what you're saying.
Yeah.
But that's always, I mean, like.
I got another one. I'll save you from that point. COM serial port access. Probably serial port access. Probably a framework feature more than a VBNet.
Yeah, exactly. And
so therefore, forget it.
It's definitely I don't actually know for sure.
It actually has been high on the request list.
Yeah, exactly. I would be surprised if it isn't addressed, because I know that it's something I've seen in a lot of places.
Yeah.
So.
Cool.
Yep. How about writing unsafe code?
Unsafe code. So what are the scenarios that you think you'd need that for?
I have no idea, because I don't write unsafe code.
What did you say, Paul?
I said, Amanda asked her question. I said, Amanda asked, sort of implying the answer to your question.
Right.
Given that she didn't say yes or no, but said, well, when would you use that?
Yeah. Who knows? I don't know.
Right.
I don't want to write
I don't know that I would use it, but it's something I have to kind of talk about, because students will bring this up.
I suppose I could give you an example. If you want to navigate through a large buffer of data in memory and peek and poke and bit and byte and do it really fast with pointers, I think unsafe code is necessary there. But then you can do some of the low level stuff that people mostly do in C++. But then again, is your average VB programmer going to be doing that? I don't know.
Yeah, it's sort of one of those things where like the uses of it are relatively exotic, and so there hasn't been as much. I mean, as opposed to, we were just talking about unsigned types, and those are also not used as often.
Right.
But even then, there are, we sort of have gotten a lot of requests for that, and unsafe code. Really hasn't come across a lot. It's sort of it's the C# has it and VB doesn't, but when it comes to push comes to shove, there really hasn't been much of a situation where we said, oh yeah, that's really, it's really bad that we can't do that or thing. So
yeah. Whenever I'm asked about it, it's like the scene from Monty Python's Quest for the Holy Grail when he's trying to cross the bridge, and you go, what's your favorite color? No, it's red, blue. Ah! No, like Amanda said, when would you use it? And you don't know. I don't know. I just like to have it.
Yeah, right. Hey, this is Carl again. We're checking the numbers for VisualStudio.net connections, and they're low. I'm not saying they're the lowest of all conferences, but they could be better. So I'm wondering why some of you guys don't go over to devconnections.com/VS and sign up for, or at least check out Visual Studio Connections. Now, this is a conference that's happening in Palm Springs in October. I personally got to pick the VB and C# speakers. Yuval Lowy is speaking in the C# track, and he's going to be he's going to be the chair for the next show in the spring. Bill Vaughn's going to be there, Rocky Lotka is going to be there, Billy Hollis is going to be there. All your favorite guest stars from .NET Rocks and more are going to be speaking on topics that you haven't heard before. Billy Hollis is doing an advanced Windows forms talk that'll blow your mind. How to create Windows forms and controls on the fly. Mark Dunn is doing an incredible talk on garbage collection and another one on serialization. Richard Grimes is doing stuff on .NET contexts. This is stuff that you haven't heard before and probably won't hear anywhere else.
So check it out, www.devconnections.com. Hey, you could win a Harley. I'm not kidding. Check it out. All right, now let's get back to our conversation with Paul Vick and Amanda Silver from Microsoft about VBNet. VBNet versus C#. What's the real story? Well, we'll find out. Stick around.
The problem is that there are so many things that we think would be useful that we'd like to give you.
Well, like what? Oh, come on. They're just rumors.
Yeah, it's just rumor.
Now look, you guys have ideas that doesn't commit Microsoft to anything. I want to, let's hear some ideas.
Ideas for what?
For future features.
Yeah, what about, VB version 10? What's going to be there?
Yeah, I mean, let's be hypothetical here.
Yeah.
I don't know. It's a really good question, actually. It's always hard for us to think too far ahead, when we're mired in the current.
Yeah, Microsoft doesn't have any vision or anything.
No, it's just that so often, when you have the vision, it's sort of like you have the vision too far out. It's never, never going to.
Yeah, Bill's the only guy that can do that kind of clairvoyance.
That's right. That's why he's the head of the company. And,
yeah.
And he's worth billions of dollars.
That's a good, that's a question I wanted to ask some of you guys. Is that I guess his title is now head of development.
What's this? The chief technical officer, isn't it?
No, he's like software guy.
He is chairman and chief software architect.
Right. Okay.
Yeah.
Right.
So he's really like the head of development, right? Sort of.
Yeah.
Okay.
I think so.
Does he really have a hand in designing, things, features of .NET, or what is his role in all of this .NET? So I really haven't heard much about, Bill's participation in the spec or in ideas, or is he driving the ideas? And
well, it's a really good question. As far as I know, to be honest, I've never, not never. It's been a very long time since I've had any kind of indirect or direct contact. I think it's more, there may be parts of the company or sort of technological issues that he does get really involved in.
mm-hmm.
But, with so much going on at Microsoft, actually it's not that direct, and there isn't that much direct involvement. I mean, I would say that I believe that, for example, when we decided to make a lot of the major changes in the language for 2002, that decision ended up going, past him as well. I mean, that went all the way up, obviously. It's such a big, messing with VB, that's the foundation of the company in a lot of ways.
Yeah.
So I think it's more at that kind of very high level. And there may be things where he gets really personally involved, but, the one meeting I was actually in a long time ago was kind of scary anyway, so maybe I was kind of frightened.
Well, that's what I hear, is that it's such a big place that, everybody assumes that anybody who works for Microsoft, is personal buddies with Bill Gates, and I didn't mean to imply that. So,
I have this picture of Bill sitting at his house at 2:30 in the morning with a Mountain Dew writing code.
That's
that's
you.
probably not accurate, but
that's
I like to think of him that way. Well, yeah, that is me.
I have a photograph of him in my office that he's standing next to a whiteboard with Paul Allen, and on the back it has a square with lines through it, and it says grid with an arrow pointing to it.
It's like cavemen discovering fire, right?
Picture of some stick figures killing a bison and a data grid.
That's right. From the caves of Valon. Yeah. Well. Oh, so what the hell are we talking about anyway? Basic. Oh yeah, VB.
Well, hey, I want to ask a question about shadows. The shadows keyword.
Oh, cool.
What the heck is up with shadows? And
right.
Why is it there?
Is it because Java has it? That you have shadows in there?
Does Java have it, really?
Yeah. I'm not.
I didn't know that Java had it.
I'm not a Java programmer, but I have taught Java programmers, and they say, oh yeah, shadows. Yeah, Java has that. So,
well, it seems to me that it's a way of defeating something that's not overwritable.
Right.
That's the way it seems.
But just don't cast.
Yeah, that's right. It gets you in trouble if you cast.
Right.
Yeah.
Well, the main thing it's used for, the main reason for introducing it is actually for versioning. actually. Although that has gotten completely lost, I think, somewhere along the way.
Well, I'm glad you're bringing it up.
Yeah.
I want to know this.
So basically, the situation is if I'm a component vendor and I create a class foo, and you buy my component and you write your own class library and that you derive from foo your class bar and you create some method, X. And so now what happens is, so you ship my component, you ship your component to your well, actually that's not so much. I guess it's like, so you've developed your component and now I version my component and I add a method X to foo. So now what happens is you buy the second version of my component, and without shadows, you compile your class. And because I introduced a method called X, and your method X is now invalid because it's not override. If I introduce one that's not overridable, now you're kind of stuck. But of course, you've shipped your class, so everybody else is expecting that your class is going to expose this X method. Does that make sense, sort of?
Yeah, sort of.
And
So it is a way to defeat something being not overridable.
Right, exactly. So I guess you were right. I'm sorry. It's just, I always think of it from the versioning angle, but it's actually exactly what it is.
Well, yeah, that's exactly what it's for. It's you don't have access to change the source of your base class,
right?
And you have to override something. You're stuck. And of course, it begs the question: so why override and overridable? But I guess the answer is that shadows only half overrides.
Yeah, tell the listeners about the casting problem that you run into.
Yeah, so the casting problem is if you have a derived class that shadows to override a member X, and then you cast that object to the base class, and you call that member X, the member X is going to be called in the base class.
That's right.
Right, that's why shadowing is really something to be used as a last resort.
That's what I tell my students.
Well, because it's not really overriding the base method; it's really just hiding it. That's why it's sort of shadows.
Right.
And as soon as you cast it to the base, the base one reappears magically.
Right.
So it's definitely something where it's like, if you don't know why you're using it, don't use it.
That's exactly what I tell my class. I say, this is what it does. Use it if you have to use it, but be careful when you cast. Yeah.
Hey, before we get off too, I want to say a big thank you to you guys for. Really, the error messages that pop up while we're running.
There was a lot of work on that.
Oh my god!
Oh my god! It's incredible.
Yeah.
And Carl and I were just talking about this today because we run into students that that just don't read error. They're not used to reading error messages.
They're conditioned to press the OK button when an error pops up because they're used to object error, or ActiveX error, or some other cryptic
error
message.
-217934225. Yeah.
Right, but they're dead on now. It tells you exactly what's wrong.
Yeah, and another thing that people takes some getting used to for people in my classes anyway is looking at the name of the exception to get the information rather than the message that it displays.
Right. Another trick to tell your students is to look at the inner exception sometimes.
Absolutely.
Especially for SQL exceptions or generic exceptions.
Oh yeah.
Sometimes they'll contain exceptions, and that's a really important thing to know.
Right.
And it can give you a lot more information about what happened.
Absolutely. In fact, I use the inner exception all the time to demonstrate recursion. And it brings up one of my favorite jokes, which you guys will like. That when you look up recursion in the dictionary, you know what it says? See recursion. Dum. Yeah. Half the class laughs their ass off, and the other half is like, huh? What?
What's the punchline?
Yeah. I don't get it.
I do want to add that, I'm really glad that you said, the error messages are really good. I mean, there's a group of us, there were like 6 or 7 of us that basically back in about a year or two ago when, basically spent, it seemed like forever, a month or two, just reviewing error messages until our eyeballs bled. And so I will pass that along so that all those people will know that their efforts were not in vain. Cause
even today we introduced a new error, and there were about 10 eyes on that single error, and we made modifications until it was right.
Cool.
So
yeah.
one of the other things that we've tried to accomplish is having a search term as the first word in the error message itself.
Wow.
So
Neat.
you should be able to search on any one of those items.
I wanted to ask kind of an odd question. We were talking just the other day in a class that I was teaching about, how many programmers are involved to produce something like .NET, or even break it down to
Just the language.
VB.NET.
Sure.
And it made me think of it when you said today you had 10 eyes or 10 folks looking at this. I mean, what's the team like that you work on for VB.NET? How many folks are involved?
Well, on the core compiler itself, so that just basically what amounts to the command line compiler.
Right.
There are there 5 developers, Paul?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Wow.
And then when we start talking about the rest of the compiler, which includes IntelliSense, PrettyLister, all of basically we call them language services. That extends out to probably another 5 developers that we work very, very closely with. But then when you start talking about the whole VB product, I mean, there are so many people that touch it in one way or another that I don't think that we could even count it if we took 2 hours and tried to do it.
Well, what surprises me is that there are only 5 developers
That's
involved.
incredible.
Yeah. I was thinking you were going to say 50 or, some outrageous.
Well,
number.
we've always said, Mark, that programming in .NET anyway is best suited to small teams. I think it is.
Yeah.
What do you guys think about that?
Well, yeah, I mean, although we don't actually work. Well, actually, that's not totally true.
Yes, all of the VB runtime is written entirely in VB.
I was going to say we work a lot in C++, but
Yeah.
I think the best teams. I mean, at least at Microsoft, in my experience, the best teams have usually been, as small as possible and no smaller.
Right.
That kind of thing.
Right. The other thing to note, though, is that even though 5 actual developers work on the compiler, there are a million people that have input as to what goes into the compiler and how the compiler actually works.
That design,
including testers and program managers, which is what my discipline is.
Right.
Yeah.
And how many program managers are there on the VB team?
I think there's like 10 or 11.
Wow.
I could count them for you.
Very cool. All right, now you got me thinking of another question. This is going to be great. What parts of .NET, the framework, or any part of the framework, the base class library, was written in VB.NET?
Good question.
Well, actually, there's starting to be more and more. The Visual Basic runtime was written in it, so basically everything that's in the Microsoft.Visual Basic namespace.
Okay, the compatibility layer, or is that just the names itself?
Including the compatibility subnames.
Okay.
Right.
And now there are some components that are being written in for ASP.NET developers, like the what's that called? The copy web feature.
I don't know.
It's written entirely.
That's a new feature?
Yep. So, yeah, there's just going to be more and more, and then internally we also have a lot of applications that serve Microsoft employees that are written in VB.
Somebody told me the Forms engine, the Windows Forms Designer, was written in VB.NET. Is that true?
No, actually, it's in C#.
Oh, okay.
In C#, yeah.
Is all of Visual Studio?
But we're working on them.
Yeah, but we have other designers that will be introduced in the next version that are written entirely in VB, as well as some wizards that exist in the current.
Anything in Visual Studio written in VB.NET?
Yeah, there are some wizards that are written in VB.NET, but I can't think of which ones actually are.
Okay.
They are.
Cool.
Once they're done, I don't need to worry about whether or not they've been written in VB.
Are you going to the Professional Developers Conference in October? Well, if you are, absolutely make sure you go Sunday night so you can check out .NET Rocks Live. That's right. We're going to be doing a Hollywood Squares type quiz show, giving away lots of fabulous prizes to anybody who wants to come check us out. Don't have the exact time yet, but we think we have a date. It's going to be the Sunday night, really before the PDC goes into full swing. Don't know where yet, so don't call and ask, but just look in the program and check us out. We're going to have a panel of experts, mostly regional directors, with a few special guests on the panel, and we'll be fielding questions. They'll be fielding questions, and you'll be playing along in the audience and agree or disagree with their answer, and if you get it right, you get a prize. It's going to be a lot of fun, and from what I understand, we're going to try to have beer and everything, so woohoo! Should be a lot of fun. So if you're going to the PDC in October, definitely check out the .NET Rocks show live at the PDC. So let's get back to our talk now and wrap things up. Boy, this has just been an unbelievable show for me. I hope you've enjoyed it. And as always, thanks for listening.
What do you say to the people who say, well, VBNet is on paper anyway slower than C# because you have to translate the keywords and blah blah blah.
Because you have to translate keywords?
Okay, because the keyword integer has requires the Visual Basic library to convert that to int32. Blah blah blah.
They're saying the MSIL is less efficient because of that?
Yeah. I swear to God. Yeah, and it is funny. I swear to God, people have told me that C# is a true language because it doesn't have this extra layer to go through. And here's
actually that. Then if that were true, that would have to be true for C# as well, because the type itself in the IL is not called int.
Yeah.
It's system.int32.
Right.
So both integer in Visual Basic and int in C# map to integer int32.
Right. They're aliases, right?
Yeah, they're aliases. So the compiler, when it generates code, when it generates the IL itself, the equivalent of basically the bytecode for it,
right?
It generates the fully qualified name according to the runtime. So that's the int32.
And the reason I'm bringing this up and I'm letting the listeners in on this is because one of my peeves about living in 2003 with .NET is, with the machines that we have today, you can buy a freaking P4 7 gigahertz for $500, with your walking around money, and people are complaining that my Windows Form program takes up 15 megabytes, and I got a gig of RAM on my desktop and it cost me $100.
Yeah.
Is it going to be less efficient? Is it going to be slower to do such and such? And we're talking nanoseconds,
Yeah, that's right. It's diminishing returns to try to optimize.
Yeah, but nanoseconds can matter depending on the type of application that you're writing.
Absolutely. You're sitting in a tight loop, things matter. But, when you press the button, it ain't going to make the form come up any quicker. You know what I'm saying?
But there are some other things that your listeners should know and your students should know about doing code comparisons to other languages.
Okay.
One of the things that the Visual Basic compiler does is that we do integer overflow checking.
Right.
So basically, if you're doing arithmetic and there's a possibility that you could have an overflow error or an underflow error, we will check for that and we will throw an exception if one occurs. Other languages don't do that by default.
Wow.
And so if you want to do a true comparison, you need to make sure that you're compiling with integer overflow checking on or off in both languages.
Right.
The defaults are different.
Interesting.
Yeah, I wasn't aware that you could turn that off. I remember in VB6 there was an option to
you can
to turn off array bounds checking, integer overflow.
There's an optimizations tab or something like that, right?
Right.
Yeah, I forget which tab it's on now. It's definitely in the project. It's in the project options. But
here's one thing I'd like to congratulate you guys on is changing option strict to be a global setting rather than a project by project setting. One of the first things I did in my class in the last version was show them how to pull up the template and change it and save it. Yeah, to get around that issue.
Yeah.
I definitely like option strict. I tell people always to turn it on, get used to it.
Right. Learn to use C-type.
Yeah.
Yeah, we've kind of been having that discussion around the hall
internally,
lately,
yeah.
About sort of what the role of sort of less strict typing is. I mean, sort of back in the day, I mean, in the early VB, that was pretty much all you had, and there was just, there wasn't as much strict typing to be had.
Right.
But now it's like, now that it is 2003, it is an interesting question about, when you have a new developer, is it really, is it appropriate to, to just start off strict typing from the very beginning, or is
Right.
option strict off? And we've been getting a lot of feedback on that.
But
Yeah,
one of
rude
the
awakening.
direct conflicts with that is that while typeless programming might be very comfortable and easy to do in the just starting out and easy to fumble around, which is good. I mean, it's great
Yeah.
to get started.
It's true.
But it also means that your IntelliSense isn't nearly as powerful.
Right.
So, which is more useful, being able to write typeless code or being able to have really good IntelliSense?
Yeah.
I think we're coming to the conclusion that IntelliSense is a more powerful tool at
Right.
helping new developers.
Yeah.
Even old developers. I couldn't live without it.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
It's amazing, like when you get an error or something like that, and IntelliSense doesn't come up. Well, I mean, that's actually one of the things I noticed working in VB.net. One of the nicest things going to 2003 was that you get IntelliSense in the immediate window, and it's just with 2002,
Right.
it's I just want to inspect something, and what are the methods? I don't remember.
Right. Right.
Tell me what I want to do. So
Have I lost my mind, or does the IntelliSense sometimes go away in the command window?
I haven't noticed that, but
In
if you notice that, send us
2003,
a
you
bug.
mean?
What's that?
I haven't seen that behavior, but if you can repro it, send me a bug.
Okay.
Yeah.
Must just be me.
Well,
don't know.
maybe not.
could be a bug.
And if it's a bug, then we should fix it.
It may have been a beta thing too. Yeah. it
Maybe.
may have been a beta thing.
we do occasionally make mistakes, but only occasionally.
Well, it's damn good stuff, and we're just happy as hell to be a part of it.
Right.
Well, you know,
Yeah.
guys, I can tell we're going to have to do a part 2 show with you
Absolutely.
guys before too long.
All right,
Because
well,
we're just scratching the surface, and we're
Oh,
running
yeah.
out of time.
come up with a wish list or something
No,
No
next time.
doubt.
And that's another good thing to bring up is that if the listeners out there have suggestions for the next version of VB, what can they do about it? Where can they send it? And will people actually read them?
Silence.
Yes, we absolutely do read it.
Amanda's home phone number is.
I mean, we do troll around the news groups online a lot, and I've seen millions of wish lists that are out there, and every time
Yeah.
that we consider adding a feature, we go out and see what the buzz is about that feature before we decide to add it.
Cool.
So definitely news groups are a good place to post it. Paul also has a blog online
All right.
that he should be reading and
Blogging.
commenting and
Yeah,
Nope.
unfortunately, there's no place to make suggestions. I was
Yes.
thinking about mentioning it, but
right.
I mean, it's definitely something that people have been asking about, and we've been.
Isn't there an email alias like VB Wish or
there
something
should
like
be.
that?
We're working on it.
Yeah, I mean that's the thing. There has been in the past.
Yeah,
and
there was
then
one.
somewhere along the line. It kind of.
I think
don't
it still exists, but it, in a way it
It's
is.
the void.
It's the make a VB Wish foundation.
Yeah.
But since we brought up the blog, I will mention it. It's the address is www.panopticon PNOPTICAN Central CENTRAL one word .net.
Okay.
I don't know.
So what is Panopticon?
Oh well,
Probably some Star Trek thing.
it's actually sort of a Doctor Who reference.
Oh, okay. See, I was
Okay.
close.
All
I was
right, yeah,
close.
yeah.
Right.
And if you go to the blog, it actually talks about where the name came from.
Cool.
So,
Not a Foucault reference.
no.
So everyone's going to go to the blog that listens to this now to find out what Panopticon means.
Great. It's a little,
Yeah, it's a hook. You got a hook going there.
And we'll add a reference. We'll add a link to it on the website too.
Okay, great.
Yeah.
And from there should be a link to. There are actually a number of VB.net weblogs, some done by Microsoft people, some done by external people as well, that are really good. So I'll make sure I have a link on mine to other good ones, because I don't know there's going to be something on the main MSDN webpage for VB that points people to VB weblogs, but I'm not sure if it's up yet.
Hey, are you guys going to be at the PDC in October?
Yep, I know I am.
All right, cool. Look us up. We're hopefully going to be there.
Yeah, we may be doing a show or two there. Also,
A show.
yeah, we may be doing a show at the PDC. We're working on that.
Awesome. Well, maybe that would be a good time to have me and Paul back. And
That would be cool.
Yeah, that'd be great.
You know, we're at
Live interview.
At the very least, we're going to be walking around with a microphone and doing a show just live from the floor. We're definitely going to do that, and so we'll track you down and catch up with you there. But we're also thinking about doing a sort of a guru panel kind of thing. So, it's just in the idea stage. We'll let you know.
Mm-hmm.
What can you tell? One last thing here. What can you tell VB programmers who somebody has put a bug in their ear that VisualBasic.net is going away? And I swear these people are out there. They're just vicious.
Yep.
I know those people are out there, but there's absolutely no way that VB.net is going away.
That's ridiculous.
We are putting so many resources into releasing the next version that it's.
I think Bill Gates would fire everybody if you got rid of it. I mean,
I know. I expect to see these people wearing a board that says the end is near.
I know.
Ringing a bell.
What's up with that?
What's wrong with them?
Jeez.
I mean, just the fact alone that the CLR, the runtime itself, has been working so hard to deliver edit and continue,
Right.
is testament to the fact that VB is here to stay.
Do you know how many programmers out there using VBNet versus C#? Do you have any figures?
We have figures, but they're changing so much every day that it's not really.
Well, who's got more? Who's got more developers?
I believe VB is starting to inch out into the lead.
Okay.
But they were close and running for a time, and I think that if you start to think about why that might be, it could become apparent. .NET is kind of brand new, and and C# is known currently as a web development language first and foremost.
Interesting.
So a lot of early adopters are web developers.
Right.
So they're going to start looking at anything that Microsoft releases that's new.
I would think that ASP developers who do VBScript would be more drawn to VBNet for ASP.
Right.
Well, I think people that have that background are more drawn to VB.
Well, I don't know. The ones that have done dynamic HTML and are used to JavaScript,
True.
They seem to be drawn to C#.
Yeah, I would imagine so. Yeah. Okay. Well, this is great. So do you have anything to say about the version after WDB?
I'm looking forward to it.
Yeah.
I want to start working on it, actually.
Yeah.
Orcos, is it?
We have so many great features for WDB that I want to get them out there so that our customers are happy, and then we can really start delivering, awesome, just mind-blowing things in the version after that.
Let me ask you this: how many things are there that are new in VBNet 8 that you didn't mention because you can't?
Thousands.
Really?
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
Really?
Wow.
Yeah. I mean, if we're talking about everything from the class libraries, from the base class libraries to the way that data works to small language features, if we're including all of that, then there are thousands.
Oh my God.
Cool.
Yeah, I mean we've talked about the major stuff, and there's a lot of major stuff, and then there's just tons of just little things, little improvements and things like that are really, it's going to be a major release.
And there are other major things that you haven't said that you can't talk about that?
Well, no.
Yes, there are.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, some of the things that I'll hint at, and I'm not going to go into details, but the compiler is going to be a lot more helpful, basically, in the next version.
Okay.
All right.
That's good.
And I don't know. Paul, are there any other vague generalisms?
The rooster crows at
We're
midnight.
focused on trying to cut down on. In fact, I think in the Eric Rutter VS Live thing, I don't know where they came up with his numbers. Trying to cut the amount of code people have to write by 50%. I don't know where that number came from. But really, a number of features trying to focus on cutting down on the amount of code that people have to write. Sort of, making it quicker to get to the things that you use the most.
Right.
Right, and
So
simplifying objects and
Yeah.
Do you think that VBNet is sort of diverging with C#, where C# is going to support more component stuff and VBNet is going to be more rapid application development? Or I've heard that, and then I've heard it denied, and then, who knows? So.
Well, I think it's interesting. It's like, we're not diverging in the sense that, like, for example, with doing generics and everything, it's like,
right.
They're
Sure.
really not going to be. There are no real major like power features,
right,
that I can think of that either one language is going to have and the other language isn't. But there is divergence in sort of emphasis in terms of things like like having editing continue. VB will have editing
Sure.
continue.
Right.
C# won't. So it's sort of like
But
we
like
will
you
be
said-
focusing on sort of rapid application development, but we do not want to compromise on sort of the the step up to power that we took in
Yeah.
2002 and 2003.
right, and the base platform support.
Yeah.
Right.
And the other thing, we talked about it earlier, but just in the same way that the debugging style is different for
Right.
VB developers versus C# developers, that extends to the rest of application development.
Sure.
So we feel that we're really targeting the VB style of development, and hopefully the next release will make good on that.
That's great. Well,
You'll just see it everywhere.
I, for one, am never going to stop beating the VB.NET drum, and I wish you so much luck in the future. And listen, if there's anything ever that I can do to help this cause, I'm all for it. So
Well, this has been really
Great.
good.
Thank you very
Yep,
much.
Ditto here too.
yeah,
Yeah.
and thanks for being on the show. What can I say? This was just probably the highlight of my week.
Oh yeah, this has been great. And also, guys, know we really appreciate all the hard work you do.
Absolutely.
Us and legions of other developers.
That's right. I mean, we're in the trenches showing these features all the time, and we see the light bulbs go off and the nods of appreciation. So and the oohs and ahs, and you guys probably don't get to hear that as much.
Yeah.
Well,
no,
we
it's
try
nice.
to get out there as often as possible.
Yeah.
That's great.
But
Well,
as
hey,
for
Speaking of-
developers, they changed our desks. So.
yeah, I hear you. All right. Well, we'll see you at the PDC, if not sooner.
All right.
Great.
Okay. Thanks for coming on.
Good night.
Good night.
Good night.
Nice.
Boy, life is hard.